Good morning, CU SoCal. It's Sunday, April 12th. It's also Easter. Today we are having a fireside chat. 2 weeks ago we talked about faith and fear and how both faith and fear believe in a future that hasn't happened yet. Fear believes in a future that's negative, and faith believes in a future that's positive. And we, as we journey through the challenges of COVID-19, we believe in a positive future. Last week we talked about crisis, and specifically we talked about how trends before a crisis are escalated or accelerated during a crisis, and how at CU SoCal we were building better lives before the COVID-19 crisis, but how we've accelerated upon our goal to build better lives during this crisis. We also last week talked about how to resolve a crisis or how to address a crisis, and we talked about the why. We need to find the why to resolve a crisis. Today, we're going to dig deeper into how we can find our why. We're going to talk about the story behind every door, behind every front door. Now, I know what you may be thinking, and that is at almost every all-team meeting, we talk about the story behind every face. We talk about how we shouldn't be judging because we don't know everyone's story. Well, today we're going to talk about the story behind every front door, your front door. You may be alone today, you may be with one or more family members, but you certainly have a story behind your front door. It may be a story about a financial challenge, a story about a relational challenge, a story about a medical challenge. It may be a story about fear. It also may be a positive story. Whatever it is, we believe that for you to address the challenge in your story, you need to find your why. And if it's a positive story, if you find your why, you can build upon that story. To help us better understand how you find your why and the importance of finding your why, we're going to have a guest speaker, and that guest speaker is my son. And it's not only just Easter, it's his birthday, and he's going to talk about his why.
Hello, CU SoCal. I am Kyle Gunderson. I apologize for the scruff today. I've never grown a beard in my life, so I'm attempting it for the first time. It's not going well. I look a little bit like a transient, but I'm going to try to keep it up. Today, my dad wanted me to share a little bit about a story I have, particularly thanks to CU SoCal. Many years ago, I did a video for the team. It was a why video, and there was a portion of that video where we did a music video for Sweet Child of Mine, where a lot of the staff dressed up. We had a lot of fun. A lot of this was very new to me, and I remember thinking in the car ride home after that same day after we filmed it, how much fun I had, and that this was finally something I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. And the words rest of my life kind of resonated with me as I pulled out a can of chewing tobacco. I had been doing the chewing tobacco for about 7 years. I'd always worried about cancer, but I didn't really let it sink in. It wasn't that important to me. I just kind of kept doing it. But the words rest of my life kind of sank in, and I realized I can't do this the rest of my life if I choose to keep up with the chewing tobacco. And those thoughts led me to thinking about things like, what about my future kids? I hadn't even met my wife at the time. And I thought about the father-daughter dance at my daughter's wedding, not being able to be there for that because I was too selfish and had to keep up with the chewing tobacco. I thought about my future son on the baseball mound, his first time pitching. I wanted to be there for that. And I got really emotional just thinking about these kids that I hadn't even had yet, and I hadn't even met my wife yet. And so between that and realizing that what I did that day with CU SoCal, this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I decided that was the time. And I remember that same day I just drove right to the Corona del Mar beach, this little private beach. I sat there and I had my last thing of the chewing tobacco, and that was it. And many years later, I met my wife, and she had a son who I adopted. And as he got older, he got into baseball. And I still remember he was never a pitcher, but there was one game where something happened with the pitchers where they decided to call him out on the mound. And I remember him looking over at me really nervous. And I just gave him that head nod, like, you got this, son.
Here you go, bud.
And then I remembered that decision I made many years ago to quit the chewing tobacco. And I can't tell you how emotional it was seeing my boy out there on the mound and being there for him. And even saying these things now is making me realize I've got more to go, I've got more things to do. I got to think about my grandchildren. I got to think about more events with my son, my potential daughter in the future. And I want to be there for them. So, you know, whether it's eating healthy, my weight, I know what worked for me before was visualizing these things and really finding my why. So I hope this was really helpful for everyone, and you have a happy Easter. And back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Kyle, for sharing about your why and how it helped mold who you are and how important it is to find your why. That hopefully made you a little emotional like it did me, but hopefully it drives you to find your why. When you are in a crisis, what do you draw upon? Do you draw upon grit? Do you draw upon hard work? Do you draw upon discipline? All of those things are good, but I really believe if you want to address a crisis, you need to draw upon your why. I know I've said that a lot, but I really want to keep going back to our why. There's an old story about passion and vision, and it's about a passerby that came upon a building site in the Middle Ages. And he came upon a craftsman and he said, "What are you doing?" And the craftsman said, "I'm laying stone." The passerby walked on and he came across a second craftsman and asked him the same question. "What are you doing?" And this craftsman said, "I'm building a wall." The passerby then got to the edge of the building site and he saw a third craftsman, a mason, and said, what are you doing?" And the mason said, "I'm building a magnificent cathedral." This mason understood his why. This mason, therefore, would be able to deal with virtually any challenge he might encounter while building this magnificent cathedral. I have to share with you that this last week at CU SoCal was one of the most amazing weeks in my entire career. We had chats on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We had several other meetings. We had a senior team meeting on Friday, and never in my life have I seen our team members become so intense, respectful, but intense. And at CU SoCal, I think we all know, it doesn't matter what our title is. It doesn't matter what we do. We are all commissioned with building better lives for each other and for our members. And we know that it's okay to become intense because our team members are passionate about our mission of building better lives. Now, many of you know that I'm pretty competitive, if not very competitive, and I would have to admit that's true. But while being competitive, there's another side of me that's really quite bizarre, and I often think there's something wrong with me. When I was playing varsity baseball in high school, we were playing in a tournament, and I was pitching, and before the game, the coaches told me, "Dave, there's going to be several pro scouts here. There's a player by the name of Tom Bernansky that these scouts believe has the potential of going all the way up to the big leagues." And Tom ultimately did play in the big leagues. He played for the Twins. Well, I got on the mound and Tom got up to bat, and my competitive spirit said to myself, you can take this guy, you can strike him out, get him out. How good really can Tom be? Well, on my second pitch, I threw a curveball exactly where I wanted, and it broke on the outside corner, and Tom hit it over the right center field fence. And I immediately, rather than getting angry or upset or getting focused, I stepped back off the mound and said, "Now that was impressive. This guy really is good." The second time Tom got up, I threw an inside fastball, probably all of about 70 miles an hour. I know that's embarrassing. And Tom hit another home run, a second home run over the left center field fence. And then I stepped off the mound, totally blown away, totally impressed. I think the coaches were thinking, "Gunderson, you need to get focused." And you would think I would because I'm so competitive, but I also appreciate talent. And Tom Bernansky really was talented. He also proceeded after that to get a double and a triple off me. He went 4 for 4. But at least I lasted, I think, 5 innings. Why do I share all this? I thoroughly enjoy talent. I thoroughly hit it when one of our team members makes a terrific point how we can serve each other and members. And this last week, our team members were hitting it out of the park right and left. I was debating them on how we could better serve members and team members, and so many team members stood right up to me and hit it out of the park. I was so impressed, and these team members hit it out of the park and stood up to me because they know our why of building better lives. In a crisis, one of three things is going to happen to you. A crisis will either destroy you, define you, or develop you. I'm going to say that again. A crisis will either destroy you, define you, or develop you. If you want to make it through this crisis and be developed, you certainly don't want to be destroyed, defined, but if you're going to be developed, you're going to have to go back and, as Kyle talked about, find your why. I want to ask you a question. What's the most exciting thing that's ever happened in your life? Or maybe another question. What's the best movie you've ever watched? Well, the greatest stories of all time, whether it's a real life situation or your very favorite movie, the best stories have conflict or crisis, and then after the crisis, you have resolution, and then after resolution, you have victory. And I am so very confident that we're gonna not just journey through COVID-19, we're gonna have victory. And that's because we are focused on our why, and because we're understanding that we are here to build better lives, and that's where joy really comes from. I'm gonna end with a couple of very brief points. There's no doubt that over the last 20, 30 years, we keep or have risen to the occasion at CU SoCal, but more importantly, I am very confident, more confident than ever before, that we're going to keep rising to the occasion. This is an Easter that none of us will ever forget. I know I'm not going to ever forget this Easter. Hopefully you'll never forget this Easter. But don't ever forget your why. And if you don't forget your why, you're going to make it through any challenge this life presents to you. Thank you for joining in with me today, and we'll chat again next Sunday.